Something happened at Summerhall, something dark and traumatic. And what exactly happened? And the readers all want to know this. And I know what happened, but I don't want to tell the readers yet, because I want to reveal that in a later Duncan egg story.
Years after a young egg ascended to the Iron Throne to become Aegon V, he started to focus on a particular obsession of his: dragons. Even when he was just a boy, he began to dream of dragons flying once more over Westeros. As he grew older, Aegon became convinced that with dragons he could wield sufficient power to make the changes he wished to make in the realm. Aegon's last years were consumed by a search for knowledge of the dragon breeding of ancient Valyria, commissioning expeditions as far away as Asshai. The last dragons had gone extinct around 100 years prior to this time. In the year 259 AC, the king summoned many of those closest to him to Summerhall, a castle in the Dornish marches that was used by House Targaryen as a summer castle and royal residence. The gathering was to celebrate the birth of his first grandchild. The tragedy left very few survivors, who would not speak of it, and the details of what really happened are scarce. The only evidence is a letter sent by Corso, the Maester of Summerhall, most likely moments before his death. A mishap led to the ink being spilled over the page and blotting out much of the information. And though we won't know what really happened until a future Duncan egg novella, there's a few scenarios I think are most likely. The first would be the most reasonable. Taking into account the Maester's letter, we can be sure that 7 eggs, pyromancers, and wildfire were all involved. The fire grew and spread, and we've all seen the explosive and devastating power of wildfire. So we can assume it quickly turned into a horrific scene. All would have died if it wasn't for the bravery of good old Dunk. As people burned all around him, including his lifelong friend, Sir Duncan decided to save everyone he could. Although it's not mentioned anywhere, he most likely saved Rhaella Targaryen, who gave birth to her son Rhaegar, surrounded by salt and smoke.
Is he a ham? That's twice I've warned you.
In his attempt to go back in and save more people, the Lord Commander died in the flames. There is no evidence of how the ancient Valyrians hatched dragon eggs, and also during the time of Aegon's conquest and even afterwards, all the eggs seemed to just hatch naturally, without the need for fire or ceremony. It was only after they went extinct that several kings made futile attempts to revive the dragons. Some think Daenerys' attempt worked because without knowing it, she used blood magic and sacrificed Drogo, then Mir Masdur. In a quote from George R.R. Martin, he says, "The whole point was that Daenerys was making up the magic as she went, barely under control, and half instinctive." Perhaps King Aegon purposely gathered not only those closest to him, but also those of the Targaryen bloodline. Maybe he found the knowledge he had searched for in Asshai. Aegon could have succumbed to the famous Targaryen madness and simply snapped, and half instinctively, like Daenerys, he conducted the ceremony with the help of his pyromancers who provided the wildfire. Seeing all this happening, Dunk saved the pregnant Rhaella and went back in for his friend Egg. And just as Daenerys ended the ceremony by going into the flames herself, Aegon began to do the same. Dunk couldn't let this happen. As he rushed into the fire to save him, he struggled to pull him back, and sadly they both were burned alive. But then, why didn't the eggs hatch? In my first video, I mentioned the idea that maybe Dunk, in order to prevent any more deaths, or maybe seeing how the madness had completely taken over his friend and king, he had to make the heartbreaking choice to kill him. And maybe that's why the ceremony didn't work. Aegon was not able to make his self-sacrifice, and thus the eggs failed to hatch. But these are all just guesses. What we can be sure of is that this was certainly a sad and terrible tragedy, and that Dunk the Lunk, Sir Duncan the Tall, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, truly was one of the greatest knights of the realm and a true hero.